Hello and good morning and welcome to the Comics Experience Graphic Novel of the Month Club. This is our comics masterpiece selection, the best comics of all time, and we're for the month of July 2021. Our book this month is a really fantastic piece of horror and legacy, and it's one of my favorite comics. It's Lock and Key. First volume, Welcome to Lovecraft. We are really lucky to have with us Joe Hill and Gabriel Rodriguez, who is the artist and the writer, and Chris Rael, who is the editor of the book. It's one of those conversations where we brought the editor in because that would be a lot of fun.
Chris has been a huge part of the comic book. It wouldn't be anywhere near as good or the same without his influence on every single issue. Brian,
you got to have the third tenor, right? There's always the third tenor.
Yeah,
he's the irresponsible editor that allow us to do this insane book, so it's all on him.
Yeah. I always think of him as not that we're the Beatles. I mean, we're not. My ego is not quite that big, but he is sort of like our George. I think so. We're more like Herman's Hermits. But he's like the George R.R. Martin of the whole show. You know, he figures out how to take our pretentious, swollen, overblown crap and squeeze it down and make it all work as like a shiny, bright 3-minute pop single. You know, or in this case, a 22-page comic book.
But that almost makes it sound like 30. It won't end then.
Yeah, or 48.
One of the questions I wanted to ask you specifically, because you sort of have this dual track career, is the differences between writing prose and writing comics. It seems to me that the very structure of it is entirely different, right? That comics are largely about the page turn and about the boundaries of the page. Yeah. You have a limited amount of space to tell your story. That isn't true in prose. Even if you're writing short stories, it's an arbitrary limit, right? It's not a hard limit like it is in comics. Can you talk about that maybe a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, the structure of a comic book, comic books have secret rules to them. They are almost as formal as writing a Shakespearean sonnet. And like a Shakespearean sonnet, there's tremendous flexibility there, tremendous power. It's like I heard a thing once where it said the strength of the genie comes from the limitation of the bottle. And that's kind of how I feel about comics as well, that within the very tight restraints of the comic book form, almost anything is possible once you learn how to manipulate and use the form. In terms of the difference between writing prose and writing comics books are a lot more fun. And I feel when I'm writing comics that I'm at my absolute best, which is one of the reasons why I try not to do too much in the comic book field, because I feel like it would be too easy to slip away and just only do comics. And I want to push myself, I do the novels or screenplays or whatever because I want to get out of my comfort zone, and do what I find, do what's hard, what doesn't necessarily come natural, but can have another set of satisfactions. But I just love writing comic books. I mean, when you're writing a novel, it's very lonely and isolated. You go into a little room by yourself for hours every day, day after day, and listen to the voices in your head like a mad person. And writing comic books is the closest I'll ever come to knowing what it's like to be in a rock band with like a gang of brothers, and you feel this tremendous, when it's all going well, you feel this tremendous energy. Gabe will turn in a page and I'll just be, whatever I was imagining, I was imagining something awesome, but then Gabe will turn in something that's 3 times better, where I'm just so pumped up. And then Jay Photos will color it, only it's so much more than just coloring it. It's like lighting it, it's like he's not manipulating color so much as light. And suddenly the whole thing springs to emotional life, and I get excited, seeing that, and then want to write something even better, You know, I want to write something. I'll write this, and that will be amazing to see. And it's a virtuous loop where you all feed off each other. You know, and that's so satisfying. That's just such a great experience, you know, creatively, emotionally, psychologically. And you get gratification in a way you don't get gratification in the day-to-day work of writing a novel. Because there's no feedback, there's no help, there's no, you know, it's just you. So yeah, that's why I love them. You know,
yeah.
I love to get in the studio with my brothers and, you know, make some rock and roll.
Yeah, no, I love that answer. So Gabe, when you get a script, it's got a lot of direction on it. It's got a lot of dialogue. What's your process in sort of breaking down that script to make it into the best page that it can be?
Well, one of the things that I like to have when I work with a comic script in any given project is that if I'm lucky enough to have the script like weeks or months ahead of start drawing, that's the ideal scenario for me, because the thing I want to do first is read the script a couple times over and over, and then let the scenes like start to develop inside my head. Not as much in terms of how I want to do the drawing, but in terms of how I imagine the entire scene, how the world of the story looks like, how's the mood, how's the environment, what would I need to design to create the context for the characters, how would the character move inside in a different scene, how did you get the difference between the different characters. I try to have all that thought period for a couple of weeks before starting drawing. One of the things that I do daily in my daily routine is to go off running a couple hours or doing some exercise in the morning. And in that time, I'd like to have the creative engine start working, but mostly trying to think about the story needs and the character needs and the world building needs before starting thinking on putting that down on drawings. And then one of the things that I've been incredibly lucky working with Joe, especially in Lock and Key, I've been very lucky that throughout my career, I've been working with very talented writers, guys that not only come up with very like intense and interesting stories, but also that they're very good at the writing craft. So when you start like reading a meaty piece of text that's beautifully written and that has a lot of intention and emotion, you get your first like creative food right out of the page, and just the words and the concepts start playing inside your head and giving you inspiration and ideas for coming up with the images. So then after like a few days of thinking a lot about what you want to tell through the pages, because one of the things that I've been telling to my colleagues or people when I do like little presentations about my work and stuff like that, is that the role of the visual storyteller in comics is this is like working in a book with two people, in which one, the writer gives the voice and the pacing to the story, and the artist has to build the prose of the story through images. So I tried to do exactly that. I tried the images to come up with all the information that the reader will need to understand and feel and get into the story that the printed words are not able to give them. And in that way, I tried to make, because one of the things, and I think you, Brian, mentioned it, it's that the hardest thing and the biggest limitation that comics have is a space. It's a space for storytelling. You have a very few amount of pages, a very few amount of frames for every page. And the thing is, how do you figure out how much you need to put it into that limited space to give the story as much room it needs to breathe?
Yeah.
And that's sort of what I try to come up when I turn the ideas and the story into visuals.